Right, verse 10. Now the valley of Siddim was full of bitumen pits, and as the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled, some fell into them, and the rest fled to the new country. Right, so yes, we know even today there are these bitumen pits, where the oil literally comes up. That's why Saudi Arabia, those parts of the world, getting oil is very cheap. Some countries they need to be deep for the oil, but that part of the world, literally, the oil can come up and be on top of the soil kind of land. And so these bitumen pits, right? And so these people will run, and then they fell into this, and others fled into the new country, right? So here, like new country, surrounded by dunes, we are like on top of the mountain, so we're on top of the mountain, then the rest of the mountain is just like you, so it's down below, lots of hills around. So the people fled into the new country. Verse 11. So the enemy took all the possessions of Sodom and Gomorrah and all their provisions and went their way. Right, so the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah lost this war. So what now? Because of the rebellion, they are all taken away. The possessions, the kings, everything taken away. Okay, this is kind of the normal way how they would do things. Verse 12. They also took Lot, the son of Abram's brother, who was dwelling in Sodom, and his possessions, and went their way. Okay, so not only the kings, they took the people as well, and with that they took Lot, right, the brother of Abram's nephew, the son of Abram's brother, who we know already died years before, and his possessions. Now this is a mistake because we know God said to Abram that those who are against you, no, they will be cursed, and they bless you, they will be blessed. Cursed and cursed. So in this case, they took something belonging to Abram, right? Lot and all Lot's possessions, and this is a big mistake they made, because now they are actually fighting against God. There's one thing fighting against the kings, another thing fighting against God. Verse 13. Then one who had escaped came and told Abram the Hebrew, was living by the oaks of Mamre the Amorite, brother of Ashur and Aner. Okay, so he came, these were the allies of Abram. So this one, and we see this so often in the Bible, one escaped, right? It's like, there's always one who escapes. Now, I don't know if there's only one who escaped, but maybe others escaped, but only one came to tell. But anyhow, so this one, he escaped, came, and he told. He came to the oaks of Mamre, he told Abram, and at that stage, not only Abram heard about this, he told as well these other people, others as well, and these brothers of Eshel and of Aner. Okay, and they were allies of Abram. So it's interesting, Abram sort of just arrived, living there for a bit now, he kind of already made allies, okay? And so they found out about this, they were told about this war. So what's Abram going to do? What is going to be his reaction? He's just going to say, you know what, Lot made his choice. Lot, when he had to choose which side to go to, he chose the best. He chose to go down into this valley. He chose to go to the east away from God. He made the choice of living in a city where the people, the men were all evil. He knew this, most likely because people talk, right? And he still made this choice. So Abram could have just said, oh man, that's his problem. Anyhow, we have this bad blood, he is family, but I don't like him that much. I never even really, although he's supposed to take over after me, take my life further since I don't have any of my children, but I never really saw him as his person. There were these bad relationships. So Abram easily could have just said, no, it's his problem. He made his choice, let him face it. Okay? But as we see, this is not what Abram is going to do. Verse 14. When Abram heard that his kinsmen had been taken captive, he led forth trained men, born in his house, 318 of them, and he went in pursuit as far as Dan. Okay, so Abram's reaction is not, oh man, Lot, good riddance, his choice, he suffers for it. No. He got his men together, 318 of them, and he decides he's going to fight and he's going to bring Lot back. So that is my kinsman. I'm not letting him. Doesn't matter if I don't really like him that much, but he is my kinsman. I will fight for him. Okay? And again, that shows as well how Jesus is dying for us while we were sinners. Okay? He died for those who were his enemies. Now in this case, God's not an enemy of Abram, he's a family member of Abram, but they didn't have this based of relationships. Okay, so still it's something that's giving up to bring Lot back. Now Jesus is ultimately the ultimate example of us, dying for us while we were his enemies, dying for us, slaves of sin, hating him, right? That is a perfect example of what a true servant does. One who really gives up his life, not just for someone he doesn't like, although he's a family member. We were not children of God. He made us sons of God. Okay, now other people might say, so Abram, this is not very wise. Okay, so Chedorlaomer and his kings, they defeated already Sodom and Gomorrah. They defeated the people in the hill countries, they defeated the people in the valley. That's a kind of a strong force. They achieved a lot. Abram sure is not on the level of 380 people, sure not on that level of these kings that were already defeated. So, and Abram knew that. So what is the chance of Abram with these 380 men going and then attacking Chedorlaomer and his group, right, and winning this battle? I mean, it doesn't sound very intelligent. It doesn't sound, Abram is you doing the right thing here or a good thing here. But he did. Okay? And it is not impossible. It's not impossible for a smaller group of people to defeat a bigger group of people. We've seen it throughout the ages, right? But in this case, not just a smaller group of people defeating a bigger group of people. This is already a very well-trained army on their side. And Abram, well, he's a herdsman, not a general. Okay? And these people sure are not army, not soldiers. And this Chedorlaomer already defeated the king with soldiers. So what is the chance? It really doesn't look very wise. So what is the chance on his own? Okay, that makes it a little bit different. This is not just a smaller army defeating a bigger army. This is an inexperienced army, a non-army basically, a group of farmers, a group of herdsmen going to fight against an army that just defeated all these kings. So sure, without God's help, this is not possible. From culture and from our history, we know in 1838, when during the Fluid Trek, or the Great Trek as we call it, when our people met with the Zulus there and they fought against them, they were just over 300 people and fighting against as well a massive army. And in the same way, our people were not really farmers, really soldiers. They were more as well just farmers trying to get away from the British. And but they made this vow to God, that if God will give them this victory, then they will keep this day on the 16th of December 1838. This happened, and they defeated. So it was a small army of farmers defeating a lot bigger army. So it is possible for this to happen when God is allowing, or God is on your side, like God is on the side of Abram here. Verse 15. And he divided his forces against them by night, he and his servants, and defeated them, and besieged them to Hobah north of Damascus. So Abram divided his forces. How exactly it is, the smaller groups coming from different sides. I mean, this text doesn't state that. It kind of makes sense, especially doing it by night, like Gideon will do later on as well. Attack by night with a small group of soldiers, and win the battle, because that is how God told him. But we don't see here that God informed Abram how to do this. Okay, we just see the effects of dividing them. So at night, when you come from different sides, it might look like a lot more. It can create confusion, like in the story of Gideon, it did. And so that sure seemingly in this case helped as well. But ultimately God is with them, and God is ultimately the one fighting them. So they were defeated, the people started running away, and Abram and his group followed them all the way to north of Damascus. Okay? Damascus, Syria, capital of Syria is still today. The same kind of happened there after the Brewers defeated whatever, they then went out and they followed them as well and chased the remaining soldiers away. The same kind of thing happening here. And this is kind of normal what happens in this kind of war. While these people are now fleeing, they are then pursued. While they're fleeing, they can't really stand to turn and fight. It's a lot easier or a lot simpler than to destroy them. Verse 16. Then he brought back all the possessions and also brought back his kinsman Lot with his possessions and the women and the people. Okay, so Abram, they took all the people that were taken, right? He got them back because he defeated the other army, and now it's right. So he took all and the possessions because these people understandably fled. They could not take all the possessions with, so they left it there. And the people, they took him, and they took him all the way back to the women and the people back. Verse 17. After his return from the defeat of Chedorlaomer and the kings who were with him, the king of Sodom went out to meet him at the valley of Sheba. That is the king's valley. Okay, so now they come back. So here Abram is coming like this triumphal entry kind of with all the stuff, all the people. The king of Sodom, who lost it all, his people, right? He came and he met up with Abram in the valley of Sheba. But before we see what the king of Sodom is going to say to Abram, we first meet somebody else. Okay, so there's like this interruption in the story, and the reaction of the king of Sodom is going to be compared ultimately to the reaction of the king of Salem. Verse 18. And Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was priest of God Most High. Okay, so now before, again, we see in the previous chapter we saw the king of Sodom coming up, but now before the king of Sodom gets to say anything, Melchizedek is introduced. And Melchizedek is the king of Salem. Now Salem most likely is Jerusalem. Okay, so Salem, Jerusalem, the city of peace, right? And he is bringing out bread and wine, right? Now some people see the bread and wine here, that's the Melchizedek is bringing kind of Jesus, and the bread and wine is the communion, right? The blood, the bread, the body and the blood of Jesus. Okay, yeah, maybe, but this is not so much a focus. I sure would not have understood it like that. You can maybe see it in here, okay? But it's like the Russians, when you go into a Russian village and they want to greet you with peace and make you feel welcome, they come out with bread and salt. Okay, so you break off a piece of bread, dip it in the salt, and then kind of eat it. That is a sign of your welcome in that area, right? You're not an enemy, you're now welcome here. So in their case, it's now bread and wine, right? The wine is basically kind of the same kind of idea right here. And then they added that he's a priest of the God Most High. Now again, we don't really know how that worked. Okay, so seemingly outside there were others as well, we believe, not only Abram. Okay, there were others outside the Hebrews, the Jewish nation, and there were always others outside at that stage, before that especially, because the Israelis, they were not a nation here. It's just Abram at present. Okay, so that would then, so there were other believers in God. There was even a priest here, and a priest in Jerusalem, and he serves then as an example of Jesus. So Jesus would then be, or he's a type of, right? And Jesus is in the antitype, the fulfillment of type, not the beginning, right? So this is who Melchizedek then ultimately is. What does Melchizedek do here? Verse 19. And he blessed him and said, Blessed be Abram by God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth. And blessed be God Most High, who hath delivered your enemies into your hand. And Abram gave again So he blesses. So he's sent by God to come and bless Abram. This is what he's doing now, right? God already did it before. He said Abram is a blessing or a blessing. And now he sends Melchizedek, his priest, to go and to give this more and make it more official, to put it like this. And saying that he is blessed. Okay, and he's blessed by God Most High, who's the possessor of heaven and earth. Ultimately, everything belongs to God. Abram just went and he brought back all these belongings. And now there could have been maybe, okay, I brought back all this stuff, I can have all of this. But by Melchizedek saying that God's the possessor of heaven and earth, he is showing as well, Abram, through this, that ultimately everything belongs to God. So don't try to just take these things from the king of Sodom, from this evil guy, right? Trust God, because ultimately everything belongs to God. So you don't take this, don't think you're going to be left out or you're going to have less, because God owns everything and he can from his side. So you don't need the king of Sodom and his stuff, but he attained in evil, nefarious ways, right, to become rich. You can depend upon God, who's the possessor of everything, to provide for you, to give you, to make you rich, as we're going to see now later on in an answer of Abram to the king of Sodom. Okay, and as well in verse 20 saying that he is blessed because God delivered his enemy. So before Abram can start thinking, but I did this, okay, with my going against this and dividing the people and fighting at night and all of this, it's my doing, right? Clearly Melchizedek lets him know that it's not your doing. Ultimately God delivered him over, okay? So like a victory, not your doing, it's God allowing, God delivering it. If God didn't deliver, they would not have won, they would have lost. Okay, and this a little bit as well, like, not a little bit, but it's like salvation. We think it is our doing, right? We think that we made a choice to follow God. But if God doesn't give you the Spirit and change your heart and then deliver you literally over from the slavery of sin and make you a slave of Him, then you can't do it. Okay? So as well, like Abram would not have been able to win this war, because all these other kings who were a lot stronger than him, who were a lot more trained to do this job, could not do it. And Abram with these few guys did it. So it clearly shows that it's coming from God. Not his choice, not his doing, God's doing. The same way with your salvation, not your choice, it is God's choice. As a result of this, Abram gave a tenth of everything. Okay? Now this is kind of where the idea of tithing comes in, and we will see as well how it will be used later on in Hebrews, that Levi was not there yet. Levi was in the loins of Abram, from the line of Abram, understandably. And so Abram, by giving to Melchizedek, that's why as well his priesthood more important than the Levitical priesthood, because Levi was in the loins of Abram. But when we get to Hebrews, we will get back to this whole explanation of what really happened here. Okay, but this is just the first moment of the giving a tithe. But just on this, Abram gave a tenth of everything, but we'll see later on in the law that that there's a lot more. People have to give more than just a tenth of everything. Right? But as well, we'll get to that. Why this is mentioned, understandably, remember that this is now an important part with the people in the desert moving to the promised land, the idea of tithing. So if Abram tithed to Melchizedek there, then this idea of giving to God is a long established part of their culture, so it justifies as well when Moses is going to tell him, and God gives him the law of tithing, that you need to tithe, because Abram did it long before.